First, let me thank the organizers of this, and thank you for inviting us to present shortly, in summary, what we've been doing the last 4 or 5 years at the Yale School of Public Health, and summarizes sort of our vision for using the three pillars of our academic institution: research and scholarship, education and preservation and practice, to model this institute we're trying to set up. Next slide, please. I won't bore you the details of what the mission and vision is. It's basically anything that has to do with the olive tree and its products, impact on human health and planetary health. And a lot of the things we've talked about today is something we've been thinking about and talking to people the last 4 years when we started down this path. And obviously, it's evolved and also affected by the last 2 years when we had to pause and switch to COVID research and work, and now we're back. Next slide, please. Too busy a slide to see from a distance, but I think a lot of the themes we've touched this morning are part of what we're trying to set up in terms of various areas we want to focus from sort of the chemistry all the way to gastronomy and culture, which I think is very relevant to what we've been talking about. How do we preserve that when we look at what kind of research, what kind of education, what kind of bringing it out to the community, and you can define community, local or global. Next slide. And like I mentioned before, we sort of organized our institute, or sort of the structure of the institute to cover sort of the 6 main areas. And I think you can see a lot of these things that we've been talking about today can fit into one of these buckets. The idea from the very beginning was, again, something we've been hearing about today, synergy. Not synergy only on the components of olive oil, but synergy among people, among institutions. And this is what we're trying to do. As an institute, as a university, we have obviously certain things that we're strong in, and things that we're not that strong or we don't have. Why reinvent the wheel? We're going to synergize and work with others across the world to address some of these issues that, again, came to the front morning, the whole session today. And I think when I recall back in 2018, when we had about 100 or so people from all over the world in our first international symposium on olive oil and health, one of the opening statements was, we have to open the groves and partake in this as one front, because we're all dealing with the same issues. Next slide, please. A few examples of what we've done in the past and addressing some of or thinking about how to address some of the things. As I mentioned, we had our annual symposia or conferences started in New Haven in 2018. We went to Delphi in 2019. The plan was to go to Spain and Jaen in 2020. Got pushed back until early last December. And we're planning one this year. And Vasilis will mention that in his presentation. And obviously, Portugal, California, Latin America, we've been talking to people how to help us co-organize in subsequent years. Obviously, showing 6 work groups within an institute, you cannot fit everything into a 2 or 3 day symposium. So we're thinking of 1-day specialized symposia to address particular topics. In terms of research and development, one of the things that we're starting, I think somebody was mentioning, will ask the question, how about olive leaf and research and using water and things like that. We're fortunate to be in an institution, in an academic setting, where we have partners like Rafi and Yale Hospitality, where I think most of the time when I pick up the phone or send him an email, he's like, what is he thinking now? But they've been great partners, not only in allowing us to think through how do we implement some of these things and apply some of the things we want to do. So we're launching this September a small clinical trial supplementing with high phenolic olives. Half of the students, about 250, half of them will get 5 olives per day for 5 weeks and look at some measures and some markers for mainly cardiovascular health. The other thing we've done when we talk about engagement, Rafi mentioned a lot of the olive oil tasting events we've had, and a lot of activity through that has been to focus on food, not, Rafi, I love when he talks about food as transformation, not transactional. And that's what he's been able to do there and sort of bring us into the fold, and how do we do that? One of the things we did last week, actually 2 weeks ago, we went back to look at, when we talk about back to the future, we look back and said, okay, if we look at ancient Greek nutrition, there's some components that have evolved over time to what we know as Mediterranean nutrition nowadays in Greece and the rest of the Mediterranean. So we identified elements of that, whether it's ingredients or recipes, actually, we found in old writings and sort of brought it forward. And we had 230 students, in fact, and members of the community be exposed to this kind of food that if you're seeing something in front of you, it's not something that came up a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. It's thousands of years. And when Francesco showed the picture of the olive oil in the bottle, that's the whole idea. We wanted to bring it forward. And it was a very big success. And we tied the history, we tried the myth, we Greeks like myths. So we tied a lot of that with the health implications. And then obviously gastronomy, you're tasting something. We had an acclaimed chef. Myself and him were talking as people were eating. So at least to me, when I eat good food, I tend to remember a lot of the conversations after the third glass of wine, maybe not, but that's a different story. So these are the kind of things we're doing and building on this, how to move forward some of these ideas. Next slide, please. Just some pictures, I think, of our symposia. Next slide, and next slide. So to me, it was a turning point, I think, our symposium in Jaen, the third annual. And I just extracted some of the, from the proceedings, the conclusions and next steps. And I think I mentioned it before. I believe we're in a pivotal moment in our sort of history as humanity and what we've learned from this pandemic. And I think this sort of olive oil and the Mediterranean nutrition and all these concepts are a way forward as long as we set it up on the right parameters. I mean, we're all here talking about these things. How do we build on that collaboration, and how do we build on looking at using this as a momentum builder going forward? How do we learn from the past, use it for the future? Because all it is, I think, is it's a matter of preserving what we've learned going forward for the next generation. So we have to figure the path forward in order to strengthen the synergy between human and planetary health as it affects all of us in the generations to come. Next slide, please. Just again, the slides on the research we're launching on with olive supplementation. Next slide. And that's just more on the what we tried to do last week. And I think that it could be applied to other nutrition and cuisines, whether it's Roman or any other Mediterranean you can think of. Next slide. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasso. You give me about 21 minutes, and I think we were stolen 5 minutes from the total. Anyway, thank you very much. I was explaining you earlier, I'm trying to, not only for my department, but for the entire School of Public Health, to give a different perspective in terms to epidemiological studies. We're trying to move towards translational epidemiology based on the huge amount of electronic records that they are available. I mean, we have so many cohorts, and now the clinical data are available through the medical records, and we have to find ways that we can take advantage of that. We also have heard stories about multiple foods. I mean, we just heard about wine and diet, or whole foods from Andonia, the entire food. So what are the elements of that? So the idea is, how do we develop a precision nutrition? And I have teamed up with Kirill Vasiliou from Imperial College of London, and we're trying to harness artificial intelligence and actually mobile supercomputing for global health and disease. And I'll show you very few innovative ideas of how you can really take advantage of what we hold in our hands instead, of just looking at the media. So going to the chronic diseases, we all, what happened? I have mine here, and I thought that Oh, here. Sorry about that. I was telling you about the Imperial College of London Public Health, and I will tell you the other collaborations we have. As I was also telling you, I have to be coordinated here. So the whole idea, what I'm going to briefly describe you today, is how we can use this artificial intelligence and supercomputing towards the Alzheimer's disease, and then move forward to cardiovascular disease and other disease. And the whole idea, again, is how we can really promote the F-zine, the good life, okay? So, as I was telling you, Alzheimer's disease is a progressive disease, and really there is a lot of things to be learned. I mean, we heard about inflammation, oxidative stress, and I can give you another lecture in here how these plaques on the brain are formed and based on the oxidative stress and how we can prevent it. But the idea here is, and this is what I've been trying to tell you, we swallow thousands of molecules as a part of our diet. Every day, what we eat, it's not one molecule, it's not one polyphenol, it's nothing. It's a lot of molecules in here. And this is, our diet is extremely complex. And when you put into the interactions with protein, it's even more complex. So how do we really advance on that? So classic methods, always what we have been using is either single compound, do experimental settings, try to identify a mechanism, or trying to look at interactions. But it's like we're trying to reach the planets with a bicycle. You know, I don't think we can do that. And the whole idea is how we can improve our capabilities of analyzing the data. All of what we heard is how we can take advantage of the great epidemiology that has been done so far. How we take it to the next level in terms of mechanistic studies, that we can go back and say, hey, this is the mechanism, that's how it's important. So I have discovered in one of my symposia at Yale, I have discovered Kirill Veselkov from the Imperial College, which is a genius bioinformatician. And what he did is, in order to really take all this data and analyze this data with just computers, it will take ages. You're talking for big computers and a long time. So he created a dream lab, what it's called, and it's an application that utilizes a team up with Vodafone, and he uses the portable phone. So when you go to sleep, you convert your phone, you turn it off, and you put it to the application on the dream lab. So the center application is using your computer, your phone as a computer, as a processor. So it can analyze simultaneously a lot of data. Just in England, there were more than 1 million participants, 1 million supercomputers. And what Kirill says about that is you can really utilize, I'm sorry. So he says a modern smartphone has more computing power than the NASA computer put on their to the moon. So, and this is true because you have 1 million computers working for you at the same time, and you can analyze the data. Anyway, to make a long story short, you can really use what we call graph neural machine learning, and it's a narrow scope of the artificial intelligence, which allows you to tap into the large omics data sets and find network patterns in the data that will give you eons of humans to find. So you really take advantage of the data available and how you can really identify them. So this is one of the first works we did, and actually we did that, and it has got so many downloads so far. So machine learning maps phytochemical rich hyperfoods to fight COVID-19. So you use whatever existing foods we have, especially plant-based, and then you have all these compounds, and then you use this network that you can find the ideas. And I have another slide to explain to you that. We published this last year, and essentially what you do is, I think you can see that. So you use the approved drugs, whatever the chemical structures that you have. You use the foods and the chemicals, the phytochemicals that are in the foods, and you're also using the human gene-gene interaction at the protein level and how these proteins can interact between each other, how these agents can interact, how these phytochemicals can interact this. In this particular case, we look at the SARS-CoV-2, the virus, and then eventually it created networks and it gave some foods that can increase the ability of your body to have a better immune response to this virus. So this was the model, and after we finished that, I said to Kirill, why don't we put a team together and examine this machine learning to map phytochemicals in the olive oil to fight Alzheimer's disease. So I want to create this framework that we work together, and we developed this framework that other people can use it to look for cardiovascular disease, as I said, and all of other disease. Needless to say that if you look at the PubMed right now, there are about 125 publications in terms of the mechanisms of the olive oil phytochemicals, that how they can affect or can prevent Alzheimer's disease. Progopis here has the first pilot project on clinical trial on olive oil and Alzheimer's disease. There are also other groups that they have been publishing, and even the latest publication is on C. elegans, how the olive oil could prevent the formation of the tough proteins and the aggregates that they are formed in there. So I contacted Professor Thomaidis at the National Kapodistria University of Athens, and I knew that he has developed a big database on natural products, phytochemicals found in natural products. And then we put the whole team together with, of course, with Imperial College, and we have Domenico Patricot from Temple University, a specialist on Alzheimer's disease, and actually has a lot of research on olive oil and animal models on this. And the group from Yale is, we have Natalie Newman, David Thompson, and of course myself. So the whole idea is how we can take advantage of this database that it describes all the chemicals that they are present. And we decided to use the chemicals that we're able to analyze on the mass spectrometry. In other words, if we take your blood on the urine, we heard a lot of these presentations here today, that we can detect those chemicals, those phytochemicals, with a mass spectrometry, and then you can make all these comparisons. So the way that Thomaidis has done is, initially screening was on databases, the natural product databases, Zinc, Nature Reviews, and papers, and they created an algorithm, or actually algorithms, that they screen all these databases and the literature, and they have developed a natural product database which consists of 250,000 compounds. So then another algorithm was developed for the curation of this list and preparation, as I said, mass spectrometry list for high resolution mass spectrometry, suspect screening these compounds in the food. And from that one, we were able to isolate the chemicals that have been identified in the olive products. That includes olive oil, olives, and the leaves. So then what we did is, and we're still working on that, this is work in progress. So as you can see, we had 782 molecules that they were able to have interactions with the proteins in our body. And so we screened all these databases, we're still screening. And from this 1,600 compounds that they were available from Thomaidis group, we selected 780 that they're present in various concentrations in the olive oil. At the same time, the gene group found genes which are involved in the pathogenesis of Alzheimer's disease or in the pharmacotherapy or pathways, because for Alzheimer's disease, we don't have a medication. That's another minus in this disease, because we cannot include medication structure-related products in here. So what we have done is we have connected these genes with these products, and then this is the working model that we have. As I said, we started from about 3,300 genes, and we're down to 73 genes with all criteria that they score really high possibility of being involved in various motifs on this aspect. At the same time, we screen all these phytochemicals. Now, this is supercomputing again, and you're looking for the possible interactions. And we have come with a list of about 42 compounds that we're looking at. So what do you do next? Of course, you can say, well, you play with your computers, you get these interactions and everything. Well, we're not stopping there. We're looking at the effects of these phytochemicals into the various pathways, to the gene expression, and also utilizing either neuronal cultures or 3D structures. And especially we can develop now 3D structures with some of the genes that are really mutated from the patients that they're associated with Alzheimer's disease. And then we can really evaluate those chemicals either as a single compound or multiple compounds. So far, very briefly, we have identified a few of the compounds that they score really high on this, and this is luteolin glucoside, luteolin galactoside, and the methoxyhydroxyphenyl glycoaldehyde, and of course some other molecules. And we're still working on that. We have bi-weekly meetings, and we have about 20 people working on this project towards that. So this is what we're doing in terms of, and what I want really to bring to you is we do have developed a new concept of not going after a single chemical, or we're not going, just on epidemiology. We're trying to complement epidemiology using artificial intelligence. And this is what the next step is. And this is one of the activities that we are working as part of the collaborative efforts of the Yale Olive Institute. So I'm just gonna say one more time, and I would like to invite you all in our 4th International Yale Symposium on Olive Oil and Health. This is gonna be co-hosted by University Rom de Tor Vergata and the University of Bari, Aldo Moro, and it's gonna be December 3 to December 6th in 2022, and I hope we all see you there, because I think this is gonna be another great symposium that we can also trying to develop many collaborations. One of the things I wanna tell you is we heard about genome. We're gonna have special sessions in this new one on the genome of the olive tree. So we're gonna be looking at what has been done so far in terms of the genome analysis on all varieties, and there is a substantial efforts so far from Spain, from Italy, and there is also a group working in Greece. So we're trying to bring everybody together, we're trying to bring also the most clinical studies. And of course, neurodegeneration is a very important issue along with cardiovascular disease. With that, I would like to, first of all, thank Rafi, which is always with us. He's part of the Yale Olive Institute, and also we're working very hard together. And I'd like to thank him for supporting the entire team, and of course, Tassos. And what I have included, I'm sorry. Okay, this is our picture today with Rafi, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to coordinate. So Rafi and Tassos, and this is from today. I want to thank the Vatican. I want to thank the Academy of Sciences that host us here. I also have a picture for me. It's very emotional, and actually this led us to support Tassos on promoting, getting this institute funded. Is my father and my brother in Greece I've lost them both in a period of 2 years, and it was very sad. But life is moving on. My father's passion was the olive tree, and I want to maintain that. On the second figure that you see on the right is what we call the Mavrolia in the island of Northern Evia. It did survive the fires of last summer. And this tree is 3,500 years old. It's been chopped up. It's not as huge as it used to be, but during the Turkish years in Greece, they were cutting there because they were going and execute people from the villages into that tree. So with that, I'm gonna stop. You see, I'm giving you a few extra time because I know there are gonna be some questions on the artificial intelligence. Thank you so much.